Good afternoon to all of you. Welcome to a next episode of our real estate series. We run this together with Barcelona Metropolitan. It's the leading magazine for the English-speaking community in and around Barcelona. This is episode 10 in the meanwhile. I've had many sessions over the last few months. So what are we going to talk about today? Different topics, specifically all related to what is happening in the market today, specifically after we've now had around 15 months of COVID in Spain, across the world. How did that impact the market? Very briefly, we will look at what happened in these last 15 months. I'll spend a lot more time talking about what I think is going to happen in the next months, so the months that are coming. Because in my opinion, I think we're close to a potential turning point in the market, a tipping point where that will be generated by an increased interest from buyers from across the globe for properties in Spain. Of course, this is assuming that no major COVID outbreaks occur again, and that we gradually continue to control COVID in Spain, in Europe, in the world. But I think we see clear signs of optimism in the right direction. So when we talk about what we think is going to happen in the market, that's one thing. But then next step is, what does this mean for you as potential buyers or as investors in the property market? How can you react? How can you prepare? How can you, in that new game, how can you win in that new game as a buyer? How can you make the best out of it? And at the end, we'll talk briefly around, so after this webinar, if you have specific plans, how can you continue? How can you start your journey, your investment project, your dream for a second residence under the sun in Spain, your dream maybe to upgrade your current place and buy a larger property in Spain, or as we see a lot now, maybe you want to stop renting and become an owner, because there will be good opportunities, and there are good opportunities for this segment as well. For those who do not know me, briefly, Ralph Jacobs, originally from Belgium, living in Spain since 20 years this year. And what we do is something that didn't exist in Spain. And we looked at the property market and realized that actually everybody in Spain in the property market is selling properties. You find agents at every corner in Spain. You might know the market is not regulated for sellers. The agencies, they work for the sellers, are paid by the owners. We've chosen intentionally the side of the buyers, the side of the investors, people who put their savings into a purchase, into a dream, people who take on mortgage commitments. And what we do is very simple. It's making sure you buy the best possible property, that you pay the lowest possible price for it, and that we can give you guarantees, that we can de-risk every single step in the process, from a legal point of view with our lawyers, from a technical point of view with the architects, financially speaking, making sure there's no charges, no debts on the properties. It's all about making that the best possible decision for you. And because we don't sell the property, we can have an independent opinion. We can give you our true view on what are good or bad properties, good or bad investments. I do teach at the university in Barcelona in the real estate master, specifically the modules around how to accompany buyers. For those people from the US, for instance, in the US you have a buyer agent. It's very common over there. It's not common in Spain. You can compare this, our role, with what a buyer agent would be in the US, for instance. Okay. I'm also for the Barcelona specific go-to person for the City Council of Barcelona for the international community for property related topics. Okay, so before we dive into the core of this session, this is part of a real estate series. We touch upon the topic of, is there a new boom in the market, in the property market? But depending on the stage that you're at, in your, maybe you're planning to buy, maybe you've seen a property already, maybe you just bought a property, have a look at our blog, sorry, on their YouTube channel. You see that here, just Inspire Property Expert, and you go to the real estate series. When you go there, you make sure that the sound doesn't start. Um, you see all the other episodes, and they're all on specific. They're all free, recorded. You can listen to them. Specific topics, tips, and insights for buyers. What do we see here? Buying during COVID, the buying process explained in 10 clear steps, typical dilemmas buyers have, wait or buy now, ready to move in or property to renovate, a mortgage in Spain or in my home country, etc. Top sessions on mortgages, market trends for this year. There's also some webinars in Dutch, as I'm originally from Belgium. Properties to renovate. What if you're renting and want to own the property? So a whole lot of information might be very useful. And if you, that's webinars, you can listen to them. And if you want to read more, just go to the blog, and there you can obviously register for the newsletters. We don't send many newsletters, but we try and be very relevant. There you find articles, opinions, again links to the webinars here, my opinion, the media, and so on. So stories from other people. Feel free to look at it. It's there for you. It's free of cost. So what happened in the past? I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we see each other. What? Sorry, organizing the screen here because it's yeah. There we go. What happened between March 2020 and today? The real estate sector in Spain, Barcelona, but across the world is in general a cyclical sector. There is ups and downs, and the ups and downs they might take several years, sometimes quite significant number of years, but it's cyclical in general. What happened now is the market didn't continue on a cyclical trend, but there was an interruption caused by COVID. That interruption caused a dramatic drop in transactions. That has caused a drop in property prices in Spain. Has caused also uncertainty in the market. So people, buyers and sellers, didn't really know what was going to happen. Had concerns. Some people accelerated their decisions. Other people paused their decisions. But to put it in perspective, um, technically speaking, I think we saw over the last 15 months a market adjustment. No big crisis, no property crisis, no bubble, nothing like that. Just from one day to another, a hard interruption of activity in the market. But if you look at the numbers, in 2020, we had every week 884 foreign buyers buying a property in Spain. So every week 884 buyers, foreign buyers. That's about 176 each working day. The 5 working days in a week. 46,000 in a year. Is a large number or not? Well, it's lower than 2019. 2019 we had 62,000. So that's 25, 26% drop in transactions by foreign buyers. That's not too much, huh? That's an adjustment. The drop was larger because some people just stopped or didn't buy, but at the same time there were also transactions that were planned already from January, February, or late 2019 that occurred then a bit later in 2020. So that's also why the numbers are still quite high. We've seen 3 types of buyers mainly active on the markets. One, people that had a little bit of savings, 40,000, 50,000 or more, but as of that price, you can buy properties, and with stable income, so long-term contract, a job. Secondly, we saw a lot of people that have changed from renting to owning a property. People that were paying, let's say, 900 euros of rent per month, and they've realized, they see that they can take a mortgage, buy a better property, so upgrade their property, and pay maybe 800 as a mortgage payback, of which only a portion is interest. It's the cost actually of owning that property. So there's a financial benefit of buying as well. That's because of the low interest rates. And the people who bought were in general people that were able to look beyond that current uncertainty in the market that we have seen and still have a bit today. These things materialize. That's things we also talked about a year ago, things that we thought would happen. So we've seen them materialize in the market. Um, we see buyers in different segments and a lot more buyers, and that's because the market prices have dropped. So if we take Barcelona, because a lot of people are interested in Barcelona, I think in this session, um, we've seen buyers on the market again buying properties under 200,000 euro. Uh, those properties didn't exist in the past or before COVID, or they were very bad properties. So they exist again. They still exist again. We're going to notary probably next week or first week of August for someone from the UK who buys a 175,000 euro apartment centrally located in Barcelona. Other people buy between 150, 160 and 200,000. These things are there now, and that's very young professionals typically that's changed from renting to owning, or they buy a second residence in in the center. You've seen people upgrade their property, buy larger. But what we also have seen is, and continue to see, and I think will might be there even more, is problematic properties that are presented as bargains. I warn for this in every webinar, but so it's where the sellers, the agencies attempt to hide certain information, hide certain problems. And we've seen properties where there is lawsuits between the certain neighbors, between the neighbor and the condominium, where there is debt on the property, where there is no cash, no reserves in the community, where technical inspections have not happened as they should have happened, where there are inheritances behind properties that have not been sorted out yet, and therefore it's too risky to buy. By the way, the number of transactions, property transactions in 2020 because of inheritances has increased by 20%. There's probably a strong link with COVID as well. So we had a clear buyer's market. Mm, what we so that's what happened. What do we think will happen? Let's talk about that. But before we do that, we will launch a poll, a question on your screen. I would like to ping your mind here. Most of you, we assume, are people with intentions to buy a property. So we'd like to, can we launch the question? Yeah, there you go. So if you have plans to buy, why did you not buy yet? And this is a multiple choice question. You can click or select multiple answers. I'm going to leave this for, have a look at it. You can select multiple. So if you have been thinking of buying, is it because here there were restrictions to travel and you just couldn't buy? Is it about uncertainty? Or just say, well, I'm actually not really sure where to start this process. What do I need to do first? If I live in the US, what is the first step to do? How do I know if I can buy? Or do you think the market is maybe not optimal enough from your point of view? Do you think prices might drop further? So there's a long list here of potential answers. So we see, okay, nearly half of the people have answered, but would like to see some more answers coming in. This is very helpful for me as well to, during the rest of this webinar, pick certain examples, talk about certain topics in a bit more detail, so it becomes more relevant to all of you. Okay. So thanks to those who have already answered. There's actually another question underneath. I thought it came on a different page, but the second question is, which of the following topics do you think will have an impact on the property market in Spain? You need to scroll down a bit on that pop-up window. And there options you can select from is, so the Spanish economy we think economists, and I'm an economist, we think will grow significantly the next year. Interest rates are very low. Vaccination levels are high, and travel restrictions will be lifted in the near future, most probably. Okay. Well, we can leave this maybe open for a little bit, and as we continue. So looking at what I see here, why did people not buy yet? The top answers here are uncertainty, so the economy, the financial, the health situation, uncertainty, the need for more savings. So people are thinking of buying, but need to save a little bit more, um, and afraid to make mistakes. That are the top three answers. Number four is actually not clear where to start. This is very, I think, recognizable when we speak with buyers. These questions are not knowing where to start and worry to make mistakes are common, and are the reasons why people often don't um, capture opportunities in the current market, where people are hesitating to make a buy decision or to commit to buy a property, to commit and therefore pay maybe 10% of the purchase price to sell it, because they have doubts and worries there. Um, so what we think is going to happen is, I think, most of the topics under question two. There is today a lot of positive vibes, optimism regarding uh, fighting COVID. There is at the very moment indeed challenges in Spain, in many other countries with new waves, but vaccination levels are going up. And we see that people have learned to live with Corona. Um, People they're not postponing their plans anymore. Um, at the same time, they've been people have been confined in sometimes often in colder climates in Northern Europe, UK, US, wherever. Um, their dreams have not gone away. Their dreams have been paused. It was too risky to travel, but that has changed now. It's less risky. You can travel with the right certificates, but also people know a lot better now what they want and what they value in terms of a property abroad. Um, when we spoke to buyers, let's say 2 years ago, it, it took often a long time, weeks, sometimes a few months, before we could come up with a clear definition of what is their target property or target investment or a second residence looking like. It wasn't that easy. I think now people have thought about it and they know that it needs to have a lot of light. I need to be able to work from home there. Um, Proximity to the office is not that important anymore. 2 years ago, nearly every buyer under 50 years old indicated as one of the top three reasons or priorities, proximity or easy connection to work. And that's no longer the case. Um, the fact that those people, that things have changed now, will bring new buyers to the market this year, next year. But at the same time, there is accumulated demand. So that's people that have not been able to buy in the past 15 months. And those who have further defined their dreams, they're very eager now to buy. At the same time, so that is personal motivation, less restrictions, travel possibilities, but at the same time, the economy in Spain is expected to grow um, uh, strongly this year, strongly next year. Strongly means 5, 6, maybe 7% this year and next year, and then less in 2023, 24. That is a lot. That impacts the demand for properties in general. We think the interest rates are going to remain very low, meaning it becomes it remains very cheaper than ever before, at least ever, longer than 2 years ago, cheaper than before to buy properties, to finance your purchase. More buyers, more demand, more buyers, but also more buyers in different segments of the market. Sometimes we see uh, changes in market trends where suddenly there is more investors coming, or more local people buying. Now, both for the local segment as for primary residences, secondary residence, investments, people changing from renting to owning, we expect an increase in demand in all these segments. Um, at the same time, I think there will be a larger gap between good and bad properties. In the past, in Spain, pretty much everything could be sold to locals or to foreign buyers, didn't matter. But there was sufficient demand, and people were not didn't have too high expectations of on property. They would expect things that they shouldn't have accepted. Sorry, accept things they shouldn't have accepted. Um, this has changed now. People know a lot better what they don't want and what they do want. Good properties will sell faster, I think, in the second part of this year, certainly also next year, 2022. Bad properties will become a lot harder to sell. People don't want them anymore. Bad properties are, what is an example of bad property? Obviously, if there are technical problems, yes, but um, first ground floor apartments in the center of, for example, dark apartments in a noisy street, no outside space, no space for having a desk to work from home. Such properties will become will stay longer on the market, will have less buyers. But the good ones will go faster. Um, I think as well that because we're close to this tipping point in the market where demand will go up, transactions will go up, and therefore, with some delay, but prices will react to that and will increase as well, both in the international segment and the local segment. I make this differentiation because, in general, international buyers have very different expectations for their properties than local buyers. In terms of size, location, quality, etc. Um, when transactions go up, the price typically reacts with a certain delay, a few months of delay. Uh, One reason here is there is still quite some properties on the market that need to be absorbed first by buyers. So stock on the market it needs to be sold. But I also think there will be three types of mistakes that people are going to make, that buyers are going to make, and now in this new phase of the property market, this changed situation. Um, and one is which existed already, is um, going after properties that are presented as a bargain, basically because of a low price, very attractive price, under market price, but they are problematic properties, as we mentioned before. Two is more people than before, I think, will make a less rational and more emotional decision. And that is the people that have been um, waiting for a year and a half. They had plans to buy, couldn't buy. They have built up additional savings. They've not been able to travel, and their dream is there, is very, very real now. Um, we see them already coming to Spain, and when it's a couple, they see a property, they love it, I think it ticks all the boxes. It's maybe 20, 30,000 euro above their budget, and they look at each other and say, darling, I think we just do this. That is an emotional decision. That's because you don't want to lose the property, but you want to materialize your property in Spain. Um, that makes it more difficult if you are rational, because if you need to compete with such a buyer, you need to have very strong arguments to go in with a lower price and then try and get the properties. Not easy. So we said bad properties that are a bargain, or that are presented as a bargain. So mistake one. Mistake two, more emotional than rational. And three is, and this happened already, and this will continue to happen, certainly because of the higher level of emotions, a fundamental misunderstanding from buyers about how the property market in Spain works. I talked or contributed last week in Belgium. There's a magazine called Trends, is a leading financial and economic magazine. They talked about a special edition about property second residences in Spain. Um, and they said the the legal way of buying a property and the steps and the type of contracts, they look similar to what we are used to, but they are very different. And that's where things start to go wrong often. We're not going to go into detail on what these differences are, but what you need to know is that to avoid mistakes as a buyer, as an investor, the market is nearly not regulated. Anyone can sell properties, and the agency that shows you the property is paid by the seller, by your counterparty. So they will say everything they want to say, they need to say to get a sale, to uh, yeah, to achieve a transaction. Two is those agencies have no liability. They don't have to give you all information about the property. If something is technically not okay, if there's steps, whatever type of problems, don't have to give you. And three, the notary public in Spain does not have a control function as it exists in many other countries. So you only see the notary the last 1 or 2 hours of a 3, 4, 5 month journey. And it's not involved beforehand. It's not involved when you commit to buy a property. It's not involved when you sign your down payment or your earnest money agreement, your ARAS contract. Not involved. So you got to do that yourself. We do often polls in webinars, and consistently about half of the people think that when you buy a property through an agency, that the agency is defending your interest as a buyer. That's not true. And they work for the seller. And the final thing that I think is gonna happen is there has been an increase over the last 15 months between the asking prices on listing platforms and the deal prices, which is normal in an economic slowdown. That this is it's not the asking price that goes up; it's the deal price that goes down. So basically, it means that the listing platforms give a wrong or partially wrong indication of property prices. You need to get the discount, the bargain in the negotiation. You need to of course, assuming it's a good property. Um, that gap between asking and deal will slowly become smaller again. I think the deal price will slowly go up again. I don't think the asking price will too quickly go up because the market won't respond. Buyers might not respond to it. There might not be transactions then, no intersections between demand and supply. We see already and more weekly um, good properties, meaning attractive properties, good location in a good building, maybe with a nice view or with a little balcony or terrace, if you talk about apartments, that are selling at asking prices. So even if we think they're overvalued, we often recommend our buyers to walk away from them because they're overpriced. You pay too much for them, but some people are buying those properties already. So we said to wrap up, what to expect for the next 6, 12 months? More transactions. I think next year, transactions probably in Spain up overall 15 to 20%. It's quite a lot. Prices with some delay will go up. Continued opportunities. Buyers in all different segments of the market. Gap between asking and deal price will slowly become smaller. Be mindful of mistakes that we discussed. And now, all good, but what does this mean for you as a buyer? If you want to buy your second residence or property or investment in Spain, I think there's four major implications here. Um, the the first one is you need to find the best deals, of course, on the market. You can screen the property websites, but there's so many properties for sale, and so many properties are listed with multiple agencies. So it's hard. And if you ask the same question to two different agencies about the same property, you likely get two different answers. So how do you find the best deals? Secondly, you will have to be able to make faster decisions than the other buyers because the good properties sell quickly. I'll come back to this point and what it means in a minute. Three, you got to be able to differentiate between great, average, and bad properties. And it's often not obvious. Huh? You need to know how to make sure it's and great is not only it looks good. Great means it's a good long-term purchase, good value for money. Um, uh, it has potential on the rental market if I want to rent it, on the selling market if I want to sell it in the future. It adapts to my lifestyle requirements. The price is great, etc. Okay, technically in good conditions, legally okay. And fourth, um, there is a for a buyer a continued opportunity to finance your purchase at unbeatable interest rates. That is going to continue this year, very sure. Next year, very likely, and then we will see. Interest rates might go up a little bit. I don't think they will go up significantly, but at least for the foreseeable future, you'll still be able to do that. That allows you to either access a better property with the same amount of savings, or if you invest, to put a multiplier on your return of investments. Um, we had a meeting with investors earlier this week, and one example we looked at was, if you buy let's take an example of an apartment, center of a city somewhere, and you pay 250,000 euro for that apartment, 250k, and you rent it out for 1,000 euro per month, meaning 12,000 euro per year. So gross ROI is 4.8%. It's not bad. If you pay the property with your own savings, so no mortgage on it. If you leverage the bank and you take mortgage on 70% of the value, so 70% loan to value ratio, meaning you bring 30% per transaction, it means you need 75,000 euro of savings to make this work. 75,000 of 250,000. If you rent it out under the same conditions, your ROI becomes 16%. So you multiply significantly by factor 3 or more than 3, just by using the financing mechanism. That's gross numbers, I know, but interest rates are so low that with 1-2 months of rental income, you pay back your interest for the entire year. Um, and even the additional costs that come on top of it make it a very attractive model. So finding the best properties, being able to take faster decisions, differentiate between good or great and average and bad properties, and for the financing mechanism, which is very, very powerful. Finding the best deals is, I think this is one of our day-to-day jobs, to screen the market, to talk to our network, to find off-market properties, not listed properties, or have preferential access to it. You can do that. You can screen the websites, Idealista, Fotocasa, IA Encontre. There are large Spanish websites. There's several international websites as well, Quiero and so on. Where you can look for properties, but you've got to uh, act quickly and got to know when something is a good deal or not. So have sufficient reference points when you do that, keeping in mind that the asking prices you see are not reflecting the current market situation. Some properties are way overpriced and might even not be able to negotiate them down. Others are a little bit overpriced, and some other properties are very, very sharply priced because a minority of sellers, a minority of agencies um, realize that if you price them attractively, you sell quicker, and therefore some people need cash quicker now because of the economic situation, right? So that's how you find them. The taking faster decisions is, I think, the most important thing there is probably, and a lot of people forget this, is proper preparation. People come to us and say, I want to buy a certain property. This is my wish list. This is my budget. Can we look at some properties? And that's not step one, because then you can't, when you see a good property or we find a good property, it doesn't matter. I wouldn't feel comfortable recommending you commit to buy it. You pay 10% to the seller because we're not sure about the financing. We don't have a pre-approval from the banks. We need to run the due diligence on the property. So good preparation is key. Preparation, two things: the financial part, pre-approvals if you want to take a mortgage. If you don't take a mortgage, knowing exactly how you will pay for the property, and secondly, have a realistic plan, very clear realistic expectations, and a realistic balance between um, budget, property features, how big, how beautiful, to be renovated, yes or not. 3, locations that you like, and 4, your lifestyle. You need to be realistic there, because if you start off with an unrealistic plan, you won't find that. Um, what we bring here to our buyers is that 360 view when we see a property, have all these reference points and independent opinion, which allow us to take faster decisions. Often when we visit a property for a client and we believe it's good, and if the client isn't there, if the buyer isn't there because in his home country, we do a video tour of the property. We show them what we want to show, not what the seller wants to show. And we we often put in an offer the same afternoon, not just an offer that the agency wants, no, a conditional offer, so that we have options to get out of it. But that means faster decisions because good properties sell quickly. Differentiating between good and bad properties. That's also knowing when to walk away from one. If you're not convinced, or if you're not convinced, we will recommend you, or you come to the conclusion that it's not worth doing it. It's not just the price, it's also the due diligence is key here. You need to look at the legal situation, at the financial situation, at the technical state of the building, the house, or the building and the apartment. You need a lawyer here, an architect here. You can't buy without those two people. Okay. So I think that's what its implications for the buyers, what it means. In my opinion, we are we are in, and we continue to be in, a very sweet moment for buyers, uh, close to a turning point, tipping point in the market, because there is plenty of indicators, assuming there is no major COVID outbreak again, that demand will go up, that prices will increase, that investors will come back to the market, that tourism will go up, that business travel will go up, that's demand for rental properties for short term. Um, and maybe in the midterm, few years, that interest rates might go up as well. So I think four groups of people are going to benefit from this, or can benefit it. You rent already in Spain, you want to buy, still very good timing, probably better than ever. You want a second residence, not a group. You want to upgrade your first residence, maybe sell it, or maybe keep it and rent it out and buy a bigger property, leverage the bank. Maybe you'll leverage existing property to get a higher financing on the second property, etc. And investors. Investors, a big group that disappeared. Investors don't like risk. They will come back to the markets. They will buy a little bit more on this. If you're thinking of investing, the cities are very good spots for investing at the moment. Property prices have dropped. Um, for instance, Barcelona properties have dropped a lot. 5%, 5 to 10% easily. Some properties even more. I'll talk about Barcelona now. Rental prices have dropped as well because there's no demand on the rental market from the international segment. So where is that segment? Where are those international tenants? Those people that come for 3, 6, or 9 months in the center of Barcelona. Where are the properties located that, historically speaking, individuals, families, family offices have bought as an investment and might have to sell now because of the situation, because they need cash? They bought them in the center at very good locations. They didn't buy them in Guinardó or in Horta, if you talk about Barcelona, or in Hospitalet. No, they bought in Eixample, Poble Sec, in Gracia, in Poblenou, maybe in the old part, in Borne, in old part town. So there you find very good opportunities for investing property. If you can invest with a long-term perspective. I built I built up assets for the future, but there's also opportunity, which is more speculation, to buy properties, renovate them, and sell them again, flipping in our terminology. Um, why does that work? Because in a reasonably short period of time, we expect demand to go up significantly, and prices are now lower than what they would be in a normal cycle, and that's because of COVID. And if you assume that COVID is going to come to an end at some point in the near future, then you can realize in a short term um, significant returns if you buy properties to sell them again. All these elements, and that was a title of the webinar. I think that is what we call a boom, a strong increase in demand, sustained increase in demand for several months this year, next year, for sure. That's very different from a bubble. Again, the bubble happened in 2008, which was a financial crisis, with a real estate crisis, with toxic mortgages, with construction companies that finance their projects, finance everything. There was massive oversupply of properties on the market, massive oversupply. The whole thing bursted, and we had a bubble. Prices dropped by 40% between 2008 and 2013. It was a long crisis. Um, There's no indication at all that there would be any bubble here. There's an indication for sustained growth in demand for properties. So if you're thinking of buying, I hope this gives you some guidance. We're gonna open up for questions, but maybe even before we, yeah, let's open up for questions. And then there's an um, we there is an Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. You can type in your questions there, and I'm gonna monitor it now. Maybe this in the meanwhile, if you have, because if people have to drop or to leave the meeting, um, if you want to stay informed, look at the or go to the blog register for the webinar for the newsletters if not done yet. Look at the previous webinars; they're all freely available. But if you have specific plans, if you want to buy in the next month or you want to buy this year, if you have seen a property already and you're thinking you're not sure if it's a good one, drop me an email. The first consultation is for free. It's 20 minutes for free. The structure is the following: you tell me briefly upfront what your plans are, what you want to do. So what property, where, what budget, etc. I look at it. If you have an example of the property, a link, you send it to me. I look at it. We talk. I give you my opinion. I tell you what I would do, what I would watch out for, etc. Okay, so that's my commitment to you, um, free of any cost. The chat function. Yeah, someone says here that's a comment in the initial question regarding what do you think will impact the property market in Spain. He said, I missed the option of other countries uh, with high real estate prices compared to or making Spain look cheap. That is absolutely right. Actually, I did a webinar in Dutch about this because in Belgium and the Netherlands, we have seen a constant increase of property prices, crazy demand for properties. People, when there is a deal, another buyer comes along and pays more for the properties. So why is this happening? I explain that in another web. But yes, indeed, it makes it even more attractive here for Spain. Another question from Sean: what is the percentage gap between asking price and deal price now? Um, so the problem is there's no general answer to this because average numbers don't make sense in this context, because some properties are priced very attractively, others are priced overpriced, and I explained this in I think in episode 1 or 2 of the webinars. Because agencies, in order to get a sales mandate from an owner, they overpromise in terms of the asking price. If a property is worth 300,000, agency A will tell the seller we can sell it for 340,000. Agency 2 will say we can probably sell it for 250,000 or 45,000, etc. So there's a big problem there. Depends where it's located as well, but mainly, and that is different from the past, from a normal economic cycle or market circumstances, the potential for negotiation in the past months and for the next months depends a lot more on the urgency that the seller has to sell the property, the urgency for cash. Okay? Example, um, the person can rent out the property, doesn't need the money, it's going to be hard to negotiate. But if it's an inheritance and there are 4 or 5 brothers, which is very common in Spain at large families, it's very likely that one of the brothers uh, prefers to have money rather sooner than later. Maybe another brother says, I don't need the money, I don't care. Another sister, same thing. But the person that has a more urgent need for money will determine the discount you can negotiate on a property. Um, we So if you see a property, there is no general rule. Shall I make an offer 5%, 10% below? No. In my opinion, in Barcelona, we have seen price drops of around 10%, although not reflect on the listing platforms, but that's what we see in reality. On the coast, Costa Brava, Costa Blanca, to give a few examples, these price drops might be, or these gaps might be larger, and they can be up to 15%. We've seen cases of 20% price drops as well. Um, so yeah, that's that part. I recently got 10% of an apartment I bought in Barcelona 2 months ago, but I estimate the asking price was a pre-pandemic unchanged valuation. So I think this is linked to what we mentioned before. So Alessandro, if you when you say I recently got 10% off, I don't know at what stage you are, but if you've committed already, if you signed a reservation already, if you signed an ARAS contract, a commitment contract already, that changes the situation. If not, the first thing we do is build our opinion on the true value of the property. We run appraisals in the same way with the same big data tools as the banks do it. So we get a very good view for what the property is worth, but we link that as well with our expertise, daily expertise in the market. What are buyers and sellers willing to agree to? Um, so feel free to reach out if you've not committed yet. Another question here. I'm interested in your real estate course at University of Barcelona. I recently bought an apartment in Barcelona. I'm passionate about real estate and I'm looking for career change. Drop me a private email at raf@inspire apartments and we can discuss. What is the percentage of closing costs? Oh, there's good questions here. Thank you for this. I like this. What is the percentage of closing costs and fees on a property? John asked this question. Depends where in Spain. Purchase costs are linked are they vary by the region. It's not the same in the very south of Spain as in Madrid as in Catalonia, for instance. But let's say the example for Catalonia, which is where I'm located, but we work across Spain, just to be clear. You have two main costs that are always there. One is the purchase tax, which is here for Barcelona, for Catalonia, is 10%. For existing properties. And you have a notary costs plus land registry fees, and that's around 2,000 euros. 2,200, 1,800, more or less. So that's not an important number. So when you see agencies saying there is 14% or 30% purchase cost, that's not true. That's because they don't know how to calculate or how it breaks down, probably, because they've never helped someone buy a property, they've just sold properties. 10% plus around 2,000 euros. If you need specific things, you need an NIE number. You can do it yourself, then it's nearly free. If someone does it for you, it's a few hundred euros. So ignorable costs, basically. What we see a lot more now with international buyers is people put a power of attorney in place. So in case they would not be able to travel, so we're working now with a buyer from California. Closing date is the 30th of July at the notary. He's planning to come to Barcelona, but we put a power of attorney in place to one of our lawyers about a month and a half ago, just in case. So if he can't travel, it's not a problem. The purchase can go on. Things will be signed. We will get the keys, and he can come as soon as he can. Even such powers of attorney are inexpensive to do. It's a few hundred euros, and you can do it in your home country, get it translated, apostille, and ready, or you do it in Spain. Maybe I did not understand it well, but I heard you say in the beginning that the bad properties won't be sold easily because the gap between good and bad properties would be larger. But on the other hand, bad properties will be sold as if they were a bargain. And people will buy more emotionally. So in the end, the transaction for the bad properties will increase as well, you think? I'm also asking this related to what you explained about the house flipping. This is a reason why house flipping would be also more interesting next to the increase of house prices in the coming years. So there's different elements of this very long question, Eva. No, yeah, I think so. Bad property. So bad property is basically a warning from me to you. Don't make the mistake. Differentiate between bad and good or great properties. Because there will be more properties presented because of desperate sellers, because of desperate agencies. Let's not forget that many agencies have not had many transactions in the last month or the last year. So they need money, they need income, they need to pay their offices. There's a lot of agencies that have been closing down or have changed office or moved to smaller office, etc. So I don't think that the people will make mistakes, but I don't think there's like a big increase or we should not expect a big increase in people buying bad properties, but it will happen because people are not informed and we see them then they come to us and say, I signed something here, and now I figured out that something is not okay. What can we do? And then it's often there's not much that can be done. Okay. Um, Regarding house flipping, I think that's a different part of the story, because for house flipping, you don't want to buy a bad property. You want to buy a property that is that needs a full renovation, which looks ugly, but which is in a structurally good building, which is at a good location, which has a lot of potential to upgrade it. Because there's properties when you put 50,000 euro in renovation and you still have a bad layout, or you still have a suboptimal property that people don't want to rent. So you need to know when that makes sense, right? But house flipping is, yeah, of course, linked to an expected increase in prices in the near future. 5-10% is realistic in terms of property price increases going forward. Um, so what is the expectation of property prices because of Brexit? Will the British massively sell their properties in Spain, and will prices drop because of that? There's been a lot of speculation and opinions regarding what's the impact of Brexit. The the facts are that the British have, in the last several 5, 7, 8 years, have always been the #1 largest group of buyers in Spain, foreign buyers in Spain. They are still the largest buyer group in Spain, and I think they will remain to be the largest buyer group in Spain. It's true that there is additional complications. There's exchange rate risk. If you have a property here and you have a mortgage in euro and your income is in GBP, there is risk related to that. So some people, yeah, did sell. Um, but people don't buy in Spain only for financial reasons. They buy in Spain because they love 300 or more days of sun per year. They love the lifestyle. They love the cheaper cost of living. Um, there's a lot of different other arguments just besides the Brexit related topics. We see strong demand still from we have a lot of customers from the UK. Um, at the moment, things might become a little bit more complicated administratively, but they are not yet much more complicated than before. Um, Philippe asks, what is your opinion on squatters? Squatters is it's a lot in the media for mainly for I think Catalonia, Barcelona, etc. So it's a reality. Um, it's I think it's also very focused, or it's focused on certain type of properties, and certainly on certain areas. Let's say Barcelona, Raval, which is the old part of town. It's the cheapest part of the center of Barcelona as well, a lot cheaper than other parts. Um, Extremely high levels of immigration there, often conflictive areas where you got prostitution, where you got drug dealers, where you got crime. So there, the risk is higher for squatters. Um, we see them a lot in, well, a lot. We see them more in, for instance, properties owned by banks. Um, when a bank owns a property, the bank doesn't go and check the property. Squatters know that. The bank has very often sold the portfolio of such properties to investment funds who do the same. They don't go, they wait, they want to probably sell them in the future and get them out. Squatters is a business model. Might sound weird, but in Catalonia, they have some rights. There's even manuals to how to occupy a property. So they have some rights. It's a business model. When they enter your property and when you detect them within 48 hours, it's very easy to get them out. If they stay longer, it's harder to get them out. So if you have an alarm system, it's easy because you figure out right away. Alarm system costs 40-50 euros a month maximum. But they also leave the property if you pay, and the cost for the and it costs between 3,000 and 5,000 euros to have them leave a property. We've not seen any of our customers, luckily, not nor ourselves, because we also buy properties with Inspire with squatters. Um, I know people who had the situation. There is many ways, legal ways and other ways to try and negotiate with squatters and get them out of the property. Um, if you want to invest, and that's the last comment regarding this topic, if you want to invest in properties, there are properties that are at the moment occupied. They sell at significant discounts, but you need to take care of getting them empty. Or properties that have been occupied, have been emptied already, and the owner really wants to get rid of it, also at discounted prices. That's properties that are often interesting if you are that type of investor, of course, and if you see the potential, assume the risks. Alessandro, why the average sale prices for square meter per neighborhood on sites like Idealista always look much higher than reality? I think I mentioned this a little bit. That was my comment regarding agencies over-promising to owners and competing for sales mandates. Secondly, if you have two identical apartments, let's say in Barcelona, um, and you ask the one owner for the asking price, he will probably say that his property is better than his neighbor's property, even they are identical. He will say it's better, it's worth more, it's nicer, but buyers don't care about that. Buyers just look at if they are informed buyers, and or at least we look at the facts, at the market, at future potential, at rentability, and so on, ROIs. Um, but sellers, you know how sellers in Spain determine the asking price for the property? So it's either through an agency or it's when they go for breakfast in the morning. People go for breakfast in a bar in Spain in the morning. People don't eat breakfast at home. That's when they talk to their friends and they say, I want to buy my property, and people start talking, and the price becomes inflated. And then they put an asking price on sites like Idealista. So there's different reasons. There's an article about this I wrote on our blog, and it's called the price paradox, and it's about this topic: difference between asking price and deal prices. Um, will the recording be sent to us? Yes, this session has been recorded and will be available in a few days, I think, on our YouTube channel. Yep. Um, okay. There's I think that's it. No, there's another question coming in. Yes, good one. What are the differences between new buildings and existing ones? Costa del Sol. Um, there's different aspects to the answer here. Um, New buildings, when we talk about, so we can talk about properties that have been finished already, but they are new developments, so ready to move in, ready to sell. That's one thing. There is property that you buy off plan, so they are building them or they're planning to build them. The ones that are planning to build or building, you got to be careful that that the constructor, that the investors behind it can sustain a longer period of lower demand if demand doesn't come back as soon as they might expect. They have been waiting already a year and a half. They have not sold many of the properties. They are 20-25% more expensive new developments and new buildings than existing properties. You also have better quality, newer quality, higher energy efficiency, and so on. Um, on the Costa del Sol specifically, you have a lot of large projects, much larger projects than on the Costa Blanca, much larger projects than on the Costa Brava, for instance. I mean, many units, 40, 50, 60, 80 units, houses or apartments, with then common areas like a pool or playground for kids, tennis court, and so on. Um, they they won't advertise discounts on such properties. It's not easy to find discounts advertised, because if they do that for one property, they need to do for all properties, and then they get problems with the people that bought already one of the other 80 houses in that project. But in the negotiation, you should be able to get significant benefits. Maybe not a price discount, but maybe a discount on furniture, on kitchen equipment, on appliances, maybe on the garden work, and so on. So there is options to do that. I'm not sure it's a fairly open question, but feel free to contact me or to explain if you have what exactly you would like to understand better. So we talked for an hour now, or I talked for an hour. if there are more questions, I'd be happy to take them. And otherwise, I'm gonna just remind people if you wanna have a follow-up conversation, just send me an email here to have@inspireapartments.com. That's still the old name now. It's Inspire Property Experts. Or just follow us through the blog and the newsletters and the previous webinars. First consultation without any commitment, just you get my opinion. Okay. All right, there's another question coming in. Is there anything very unique about the Barcelona or Palma markets now or in the next year worth mentioning? Broad question. Palma, first of all. Palma was one of the, is I think the only city in Spain where prices has gone up that much after the crisis from 2008 to 2013. Prices went above historic prices. I said in previous webinars that I don't think that people will continue to buy properties in Palma at the prices, at the pre-COVID prices. Even not the Germans, even not the British, because it's become so expensive. So I think there is be careful that you don't overpay. Barcelona, I think, has what we mentioned, very strong current short-term and mid-term opportunities for buyers in all segments. I think specifically in the city center, if you like that part for lifestyle or for investment reasons. Also, if you go a little bit outside the city center, a lot greener areas, more parks, and you buy for the same amount of money, larger properties and very well connected to the center. What applies to both markets, Sean, is that they're not regulated, as we discussed in the beginning. So you got to be very careful here. In Barcelona, I think you will see a stronger inflow of investors in the next months because they'll come back. They see that the risk becomes manageable, controllable. Will come back to the markets. Again, here, if you doubt between certain cities or locations, that's a typical topic to have a workshop about, workshop on investment strategy or just buying preferences, define them, fine tune them, etc. So Jeff, do we launch last question on the screen? I think we would just like to know.
Disappeared for some reason. I don't know.
Okay. Okay. Now you hit a last question, just to know from you how inspiring you found this webinar, this session. If this is helpful, if you know more now than before the session, if you think this will help you make better decisions. So we can't launch it, but feel free to share your feedback. And we hope that you know a bit more, that you can take better informed decisions. And if you have specific plans, we would of course love to help you achieve them in Spain without risks, without problems, and at better prices than your friends, so that your friends are going to be really jealous when they come to your place and say, how did you find this and how comes you didn't pay more for it? So that's what we often hear from our customers. Thank you very much. Wish you a good evening, good afternoon if you're in other parts of the world, and you will receive a follow-up email with the recording of the session. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.